The Israeli elder statesman, now 83 and many's favourite to be his country's next president, had met the Emir of Qatar shortly before our interview and been told he should open a dialogue with Hamas, which won Palestinian elections 13 months ago. "I'm not interested," said Mr. Peres. "There won't be any talks with Hamas unless it recognises my country." It was this and other ground that we were to go over in an interview in which we talked of his personal ambition, his hopes for peace, and what he thought of Iran's president saying that Israel should be wiped off the map. He also admitted to me that using cluster munitions in last summer's war with Lebanon was wrong. The Nobel Peace Prize winner says he believes that peace between Israel and the Palestinian people can be achieved in his lifetime, that the two countries can live without violence side by side. Look forward, he says, because the future offers hope. Israel's deputy prime minister has often been seen as one person within the Israeli establishment that those who regard the country as an enemy can deal with. He's founded the Peres Center for Peace and twice been prime minister. Today he's number 2 to Ehud Olmert, but is still clearly ambitious. I began by asking about recent conversations with the Palestinian president. You met Mahmoud Abbas at the World Economic Forum. He said, "We have a roadmap for peace. We need to start negotiations." Is there room for compromise on both sides?
Yes, and I think it's possible, and I think we are near it. I think today the problem is rather the split among the Palestinians than the conflict between them and us. And once they will unite and establish a government, and even before, we are ready to negotiate with Hamas right away.
On your website, you quote Nelson Mandela as saying, "If you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy." Does that mean you would work with Hamas if they were in a unity government with Fatah?
We are not the enemy of Hamas. Hamas is refusing to participate in the peace process. They don't want to talk with us. They don't want to recognize Israel. They don't want to respect the signed agreements. And they said that even if we give back every inch of land, they won't make peace. So if Hamas will change its policies, why not? If they won't change, what can we do?
It makes for a very difficult position if there is then a unity government with Hamas in it. From Mahmoud Abbas's point of view, does he go for a unity government, which may well solve his internal problems, but they would then exacerbate the problems he might have in dealing with Israel?
We see eye to eye with Abbas, because he's really for peace. We respect his position. And he's negotiating with Hamas. He too understands that you cannot have a unity government without agreeing on the union. What is the unity government for? You can have two governments if you want and call it one government. If you have two policies, you don't have one government. Now, if Hamas will turn in the direction of peace, we have nothing against their name or their persons.
But on current form, when Tzipi Livni says compromising with extremists will not promote anything, this is during the course of the meetings in Davos, was that a warning to Mr. Abbas not to form a unity government?
Let's escape a little bit the world of formulas and return to the ground as it is. Israel gave back completely Gaza. We dismantled the settlements by force. So Gaza is already in the hands of the Palestinians completely and fully. On the West Bank, Mr. Olmert suggests as an opening position to give back to the Palestinians almost 90% of the land, and about the rest to have a swap. And he says also it will be done as a contiguity. It won't be sliced in pieces. I mean, the difference is minor. And I think we can move ahead. And I think what prevents moving ahead is really the division among the Palestinians, because right now Hamas has turned with its face to Iran rather than with its face to peace. That's the problem.
But I return to my question. Was Tzipi Livni actually warning? Have you said to Mahmoud Abbas that there is a danger in forming a unity government, that it would be better for you perhaps to hold out for early elections rather than get into bed with Hamas in this way?
I think we are very careful not to intervene in the business of the Palestinians and not appear as intervening. We are listening and watching the positions of Mr. Abbas, and we fully respect it and support it. We don't have to put our own conditions. I do expect that finally the Palestinians will make a choice. What they are doing right now is harming themselves. They can have a Palestinian state in a short while, and a real Palestinian state. And we are sincere in our offers. And it so happened that Hamas itself, yesterday the Emir tried to tell me that Hamas pragmatically is more forthcoming. Maybe. But how can you begin to be forthcoming if you don't want to meet, you don't want to talk? That's the problem. But I do believe the Palestinians are beginning to revolt against the Hamas position. They didn't fulfill their expectations.
Let's turn now to last summer and the war in Lebanon. Israel has received some criticism for its use of cluster munitions for the number of civilian deaths that there were in Lebanon. And it's believed by some researchers that uranium-tipped devices were used.
No. Uranium-tipped devices were not used. This is just a fantasy, totally unfounded. About the cluster bombs, to be short and clear, we committed a mistake. We regret it. Apparently it was done without the knowledge even of the chief of staff. You know, it so happened that in war there are many mistakes. So the greatest mistake is war itself. And the best way to prevent mistakes of war is not to have the mistake of a war. And I think Hezbollah provoked an unnecessary war. They suffered. They made Lebanon suffer. They made Israel suffer. They didn't achieve anything. Today, Lebanon is more divided than ever. There is a foreign body in the Lebanese politics, an army within an army, a state within a state, representing an Iranian interest more than a Lebanese unity. Who needs them? What for? What are they serving? They want to pray to the God? They don't need guns, and even not missiles. So for us, it's very hard to understand what is this intervention of Hezbollah necessary at all? Whom do they serve? What do they serve? What is their destiny?
But their support on the streets of parts of Beirut, and I've been there in the last 6 weeks to see what it's like, has certainly grown since the war in the summer. So in that sense, they are strengthened.
It's tragic when the streets are running a state. The state has to run the streets. And you cannot have whims and wilderness prevail. It's tragic. And the majority of the Lebanese, without being there, are supporting Senor. He is being supported by the rest of the world. A couple of days ago, he got $7.5 billion. Everybody wants to reconstruct Lebanon. Who prevents it again? The Hezbollah. They want to topple down. Senor, what for? Why? He was properly elected. The Hezbollah doesn't claim that they are the majority. They're a minority. And the only way for a minority to govern is to use force. That way they use force. So when you look about it from a general point of view, you know, in the war there are mistakes and it costs lives and it brings tragedies, which I regret very much.
And indeed, the suggestion is that Israel carried out the war so badly that it hurt you within the country domestically too.
I don't know, you know, in a democracy, you're being criticized and you don't hide. And you have the right to voice the criticism. And in Hezbollah, nobody criticizes. So everything there is okay. But Nasrallah himself says that he admires Israel, that we are airing out our mistakes publicly, openly, and try to correct them. He tries to hide them and to continue to make them. That's the difference. Nobody says that a democracy is a perfection. A democracy is a freedom. In a freedom, you unfortunately make mistakes, admit them and correct them.